First of all, I'm just going to make it very clear. This is a theory. I'm going to make the video and the concept of this whole setup very obvious, very clear of what I'm trying to gauge. But this is, at the end of the day, a theory that I have some... I think I have some evidence to kind of at least give it a logical reason to exist, where I'm not just making a theory to have a theory, where it's like, well, what if aliens showed up? No. This is based off of content that we have currently in the story, what we know that Hiroshima is planning, and where the events could kind of like lead to this sort of scenario. And I have a theory of like how it would go in that scenario, but obviously that's like a theory of what would happen inside of a theory, is getting at some Inception thing. But I mean, it would be cool just to kind of mention the idea, at least I have, of how it would go. But essentially, I'll just kind of start with the thing about the 100 Years quest and the whole setup that it has and what Mishima ended up doing with pretty much like the main character. Well, what Natsu's thing is in this whole setup. Because initially, we knew about the 100 Years quest back from Gildarts. Gildarts went on it and failed. And Natsu, at the end of the pre-100 Years quest run, decided to take up the quest and take the main cast away onto, try and perform the 100 Years quest. And then we had the 100 Years quest continuation. We got to Elisari, found out about the Dragon Gods. Now, the Dragon Gods are really crazy. I had a theory that we could end up seeing really powerful wizards and then still powerful dragons in hiding somewhere out in the world, because it's not like Acnologia could somehow sense the whole planet. It's all based off smell, and Irene showed that there are ways you can hide from him. Like, she altered her scent. Like, that just makes sense. It's like, not... Acnologia's way of tracking is just a very high level of a basic sense. But with this whole setup, we ended up getting the Dragon Gods. And with the Dragon Gods, it was like, okay, we have 5 big boss characters that they're going to go fight, and what goes on in the story in between. But what Mishima ended up doing with Ignia during the whole fight with Mercephobia is he introduced a aspect of this quest that is personal to Natsu. This has now gained a at-home level of connection to what's going on. It's not just the main cast, it's not just the quest they're on for the guild. Natsu now has something that is directly personal to him. Obviously, Ignia being the true blood son of Ignea, and Ignia having all these problems and being such a big dangerous opponent, Natsu wants to pretty much set him straight, see what he can do, and take responsibility, since he is directly from Ignia. And the thing we know from Ignia is Ignia has a personal reason to be coming at Natsu. He wants to fight Natsu one-on-one, but right now Natsu isn't powerful enough. He wants to have this big, amazing battle to the death since Acnologia is not around, and now he's coming for Natsu instead. But the thing about that is, again, Natsu is currently not strong enough to fight Acnologia, like full-level opponents. People like Ignia, people like Selene. Like, he was able to defeat Alderaan, but we know Alderaan was much, like, by a very good amount weakened from his prime state with the death of his god seeds and in between the regeneration time. Similar how we saw Suzaku could beat human form Selene, but didn't come close to Dragon Irene, like actual full power Irene completely just destroyed him. Well, could have, because obviously she beat Georg, it was stronger. But essentially, Natsu isn't powerful enough. So with this whole setup, instead of it being the main cast to defeat all these dragons, Ignia is somebody that Natsu, I fully believe, has to beat on his own. I think when it comes down to the fight between those characters, when Ignia, like pretty much primarily, it needs to be Natsu as the one to fight and defeat him. 1v1, obviously, like I said, it has a very personal connection to him, and it just makes sense for this also to be his opponent at some point. And Natsu's power is already the top in the team, and he's not even at the peak of his game yet. As we've seen, he's still getting stronger. All of the main cast are. But with that comes the question of, again, as I've been mentioning, something that's personal to Natsu. And with Natsu's whole setup, I know some people are going to try and tell me, like, well, that's not technically canon, but it's like, I feel like it's obvious. Well, the form that Natsu took when he fought Mercephobia after Ignia forced him to eat his flames was absolutely his, like, Aetherius form, but pretty much the same one that we saw in Alvarez, but with Dragon Force clad on top of it, but it seemed way more Dragon Force kind of heavy, like form-wise than his ethereal form. Still had like the shadow around the eyes, the dark energy kind of like coming off his hands. He had the claws, like, and he had the mindset of him. He had that kind of one-track mind, eliminate the target way of thinking, the same way that he thought about Xerath. And he definitely was switching between his mentalities in there, and Natsu even obviously, like at the end of it, didn't even know what was happening. We know that he didn't really remember pretty much the whole portion of the fight after he started fighting Mercephobia. But with Ignia, eventually, like, Natsu is gonna have to be level with him to fight him. But I think, like, there's obviously got to be plot stuff that leads up to it. And Mishima has shown what he kind of does with characters that have personal things with the main character, because that's always an important thing. Look at something like Bleach. Like, Tsukishima in Bleach was using his ability to turn Ichigo's friends against him. He was figuring out how to fight this guy at home, to get him at his core. It's not like he's well, in Ignia's case, he is a mega world boss, but he also, at the same time, and I think more primarily, is a home boss for the main character. It is somebody that's directly tied to Natsu's, like, biggest things, tied to his father. And with, say, like, Rave Master, you had, a small spoiler, nothing crazy, Lucia pretty much goes steal the first kiss of Ellie right in front of Haru, which obviously caused trauma for Ellie, which pissed off Haru even more than he already was. In Eden Zero, we had Shura and Shiki, and Shura was doing everything he could to just torment Shiki so aggressively, and then just doing everything he could and just being a psycho killer. With Ignia, I think that there's a strong chance with Ignia's personality, how strong he is, the whole position he's in, his mentality, his goals, and what he's demonstrated. He already threatened that he would kill he actually threatened to kill all of the main cast to kind of get Natsu fired up to fight him. Because he already knows that, like, pissing Natsu off and actually getting his emotions up makes him more powerful. But with the whole setup, the idea of killing off any of these characters, like, I gotta be real. Like, this is a mainstream shonen, and Mishima, a lot of other shonen battle mangas especially, they don't kill off a lot of protagonists very often. It's more set up to be a big emotional hit instead of just, like, killing characters off. Like, some do, but it's different. And some of the characters are not gonna die because of their kind of, like, value in the story. Like, I don't think any of the main characters are gonna die, but there are potential for characters that can die. And I absolutely do not want Mishima to do anything more with Makarov and the idea of him dying after his Alvarez one, because it's like, I understood what he was going for with, like, his whole idea of, like, how Makarov came back and, like, what he was doing with that. But it's like, at this point, don't do it again. Like, I fully want Makarov to die happily, quietly, like, in his sleep inside the guild. That's like, just leave that there. But who could die? And there is actually a really good possibility for it, and the way that I mentioned that I envision how it could go, I think would make sense with the setup of the story. And I think, again, I'll give my reasoning for it, but it could be Gildarts, because one thing Mishima mentioned was that Sting, Rogue, and Gildarts were all going to be involved in the 100 Years Quest series at some point. They're all going to kind of show up and actually be a part of it. And Selene just grabbed Loxus and Gajil, so she could easily grab Gildarts and bring Gildarts in the fray of things. Or somebody like Ignia who would literally just fly over and grab Gildarts and bring him over and involve him in whatever his story arc's going to be in. Or Gildarts could just show up with Sting and Rogue. Who knows? There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that it could lead to. But around that, there's a couple things that I think would make a lot of sense with doing it. And again, story-wise, and I think from a writing standpoint. Story-wise, like I mentioned, there could be a reason that Gildarts has been brought over, and he has to, like, my idea is, like, say Ignia fights Natsu round when he beats him, and there's, like, a bunch of characters and he's trying to kill Natsu, and there's a bunch of characters trying really hard to hold it, like, pretty much keep Natsu away from Ignia, let, like, Wendy heal him, maybe, it's just a game of trying to keep distance, similar to, like, when Acnologia was, like, messing with everybody on Christina, but actually, like, a serious, like, he's taking it seriously, he's coming and trying to kill him, or at least in a maniacal kind of psycho way. But Gildarts could go up and decide to, say, like, pretty much sacrifice himself in order to buy time. And one of the reasons I think this could go is Ignia definitely is different than Acnologia from a personality standpoint. Clearly, Ignia wants the fight. He wants to battle. Like, he wanted to go fight Acnologia, but Acnologia was killed before the point where he thought he'd be ready to go beat him. With Acnologia wanted genocide. Acnologia wanted to slaughter and just drive the dragon race and anybody who sided with them into extinction. He wanted to eradicate them. We saw that with God Serena when he's actually... When he decides, like, this is not something that I really want to even deal with, but I just want him dead, he goes for it. On Serious Sign, when he stopped playing with, the Fairy Tail Guild, he was just going to nuke the place. We'd only have seen him kind of, like, enjoy fighting other Dragon Slayers to a degree. Like, that's the only time we've ever really shown Acnologia where he seemed to really be enjoying the fight. Because even in the flashbacks, the stuff that they put in the anime, he was, like, murdering dragons aggressively. Even when he fought Irene, he had a smile on his face. But Ignia, say, like, even though there's a big gap between somebody like Gildarts and Ignia, I think Ignia would be one of those characters that would pretty much toy with him, like, let him just fight, but he obviously isn't taking him seriously. He knows he could end the fight at any point. And put it in a way, again, this is one of the things I think it would tie in really strongly into a story way. And I'll kind of just pull back and bring in Beta Heaven, because I do think Beta Heaven needs to come back. And if Natsu's beaten it by Ignia in a state where he's kind of like half dead, he's in that limbo, again, Beta Heaven portion of like of the series in his own kind of like world, and maybe he comes back, he's a little bit stronger, maybe he does talk to Acnologia. There's a fan fiction that somebody did, and Acnologia ended up meeting Natsu inside of that world at some point, and we already did get like the whole hinting from Ignea when he went out to his in Beta Heaven that Acnologia might be in there, because it really just depends on how Natsu thinks about it. Like, if he wants Acnologia to kind of like be kind of peaceful in the afterlife, essentially. And the gap from what we saw in Natsu when he got back on his feet after Ignea was killed, he seemed like he wanted revenge on Acnologia. But when he saw Acnologia, he was more about how he started discerning dragons, kind of like people, where they're pretty much like there are good people and there are bad people. There are good dragons and bad dragons. It's just kind of the same way. There's no kind of like generalization on them, and he can kind of like see where Acnologia was coming from, but at the same time he didn't agree with him. And I always thought that was really cool, but it would make a lot of sense from what was already put in the story and the way that Natsu thinks and the way that Natsu is, the development he got between that year of Tartaros and Alvarez, that we would see Acnologia if he went in there again. And something that could lead to kind of like one of those kind of like just like you have like some form of big revelation, kind of like your base power up is just kind of stronger. And again, small Rave Master spoiler, kind of like, I won't give context. When Haru defeated Barrio, when he fully defeated him after he got was it the Rave Stone of Truth? I won't go too much into it. Like, if you get to the point in the anime or in the manga, if somebody here hasn't read Rave Master, you'll know that I didn't mention any of the actual like meat of that seed. It's just like that guy that is defeated. You'll understand if you ever read it. But with this whole setup, I think with the way that Natsu went to Igneo when Acnologia killed him, say you have a similar situation where Natsu gets up, like he finds out what's going on. Maybe he shows that his like dragon senses are way higher, like they're miles and miles and miles away or something. He could smell Ignea or something, or some form of demonstration that could like put him like his level up, but kind of like get back in the kind of like the mindset of what's going on. And he could run to like the battlefield of wherever Gildarts and Ignia are fighting. And in a similar sense to when Natsu was approaching Ignea and Acnologia, and then the scene happened where Ignea was killed, you can have that with Gildarts. And the difference between these two things is where Natsu was powerless against Ignea being killed. With Gildarts, I feel like he would have more of that rage, and it would push him at a level to actually fight him. Kind of like what we saw when I was mentioning the form that he fought Mercephobia with, is that Natsu, that idea that it is a theory, and again, I can't say 100% canon because it's not being confirmed, but I feel like it's obvious. But pretty much everybody else you have backstory on, because like I don't expect to get like too much on Freed or Bixlow again, but Gildarts is very renowned in the guild. He's a very powerful character who's always demonstrated when he shows up to be able to really compete, and obviously being a role model character to Natsu, you'd think you would have it by now. Like that's the weirdest thing about Gildarts is we don't really have anything. And I always thought that was kind of like the funnier thing when people make the joke about like Gildarts and Shanks, but it's like Shanks, we know a good amount of his backstory, but he doesn't really do a lot. But it's even when he shows up, he just kind of hangs out and he just does stuff. It does stuff from a talking standpoint, but then Gildarts, when he shows up, is ready to throw down. Stuff is always going to get kind of progressed. And then, you know, the closest actually we really have on like Gildarts' past is the stuff with Cornelia. But I think it would make a lot of sense for that to be the character to be killed in the story, kind of the way that's set up. Because one, I don't think it'd be Makarov. I don't think a lot of the pretty much everybody right now that's in the labyrinth and people adjacent to them, like for Gray it's Juvia and for Godjo it's Levy. I don't think anybody like that is gonna die. Similar to how like Urza, I don't think Jalal's gonna die. But Makarov is somebody like, again, I think he's off limits at this point. And like Mishima could kill off some of like smaller members of the guild. That would be impactful to Natsu, but I don't think much as the reader. But with Gildarts, I think it would be a perfect opportunity to, one, give us his backstory, give us the origin story of Gildarts. Where is he from? What was he like growing up? And pretty much just show this origin story of this, you know, big deal person in the guild. As well as, I think it would make a lot of sense from a narrative standpoint, because it would obviously be with Acnologia killed Natsu's father, whereas Ignia would be killing Natsu's role model, kind of like stand-in fatherish dude that he looks up to. But the difference between the two of them, whereas Acnologia, he couldn't do anything about it. I think at Natsu's current point, it would enrage him and power him up to where he would probably go into that form again and be able to fight Ignia one-on-one, and their fight would just kind of progress from there. And maybe, you know, we get some berserk Natsu fight, and then he would have to take control and see how things progress from there, and whether or not Mishima wants to keep Ignia around. Actually, I was gonna say, like, I always had the idea if Mishima did keep Ignia around, he would have to have a redemption story for him. But I'm like, if he goes this route, I don't really see a redemption story if he kills Gildarts. Whereas, like, if he decides to have like a redemption story between Ignia and Ignea, do something to kind of like make him more understandable. I don't really know if he can, because it's like he's kind of like Acnologia, where he's so far gone that I don't think he can really be redeemed. He's not like Jalal that, you know, did some bad stuff, but Ignea's like destroyed countries for fun. He's gone around incinerating probably millions for who knows how long within these centuries, and just been, I guess, at least 100 plus years, really, because the 100 Years quest involved all of them. I would imagine they were at least semi-active within the 100 years, at least enough to kind of get noticed by somebody looking for them. I guess, well, I mean, I was going to say Acnologia technically probably was looking for him, if a different theory I had in mind was kind of like true, when you see him at the end of Dragon Cry and he's wandering around. But with this whole setup, we would have somebody who's way more capable of fighting him just by the way that the Law Dragon works, versus Acnologia, who's just going off the smell. But we'll see. Obviously, like, this is still a big theory. This is like a wild theory, but I feel like with the fact that Mishima is making it personal, and what we've seen he's willing to do to a character like his main character, when it is, I'm making this guy your personal enemy. But again, Natsu's different. Lucia was to a degree, because Lucia was like a mixture of this and like Shigaraki, kind of, where he's not Shigaraki. Who am I thinking of? I guess sorta, because he was kind of like the up and coming villain. I was thinking, I was trying to think of somebody more that like the main character actually did skirmish with a couple times, because Lucia and Haru do fight a few times before their big battle. But yeah, it's something that I could see happening. I don't know if it's going to happen. It's based off of pretty much a few pieces of evidence and the way that I think it could work from a story standpoint and make a lot of sense. But that's pretty much it for this. I really wanted to talk about this because I really like the idea. It's pretty much like if Mishima wants to go down the good route and give Ignia more of like a redeeming backstory, but I don't think he can with the whole fact he's destroyed countries and stuff for chuckles and flexing, versus like if he keeps going down that personal attacking route. And I kind of like the idea of Ignia and Natsu having kind of like this brother, like former enemies now brothers, kind of like if Zareth went a happier way and then Zareth's curse was fixed and Natsu and him could actually be brothers and like get along with each other. But it's like I don't really know with like Mishima's track record of again these personal enemies and what Ignia's already done. Like he would have to really work this out in a way that would redeem like Ignia. I mean he redeemed Jalal, but this would just be of a higher caliber. But it's like I don't think he's gonna have, you know, hundreds chapters after Ignia to like logically like flesh out his character like Jalal was. I don't think he's the same type of character. But I could definitely see this, and I would definitely want to know what other people have to say about this theory and whether or not they could see this possibility happening. Because again, I don't think Makarov should be used as a death flag character again. Whenever he dies of old age, sure. I don't think Lucy's gonna. I don't think Urza, Gray, or anybody adjacent to them. Again, I don't think those characters are gonna die. But I think the best way to do it that would still like it wouldn't target those guys. You wouldn't have to kill enough rather as a target, but you'd be able to logically do it in the story and make it really effective. Is somebody like Gildarts, somebody who pretty much everybody likes. Gildarts is just one of those characters that everybody likes once he's put into a series, and I've never heard of anybody disliking Gildarts. He's kind of like someone like Yami from Black Clover or All Might. Well, actually, I think there are people that dislike All Might. I wonder who's like that guy in My Hero now. But you know, like there's always one of those guys. I think Bleach, like someone like Kisuke or Hara, like there's always somebody that people just seem to all enjoy. And Gildarts is pretty much that for Fairy Tail, and I can definitely see it as like a way to logically give us his backstory on top of that. But we'll see. And then like kind of like that last piece of like older generation really before we move into like the newer ones, because obviously I think the only person that could be Killmaster is Laxus. That's one of the reasons I don't think Laxus can die. But we'll see about that. That's obviously speculation. That's obviously just like this whole thing is obviously a very aggressive theory. This is a very aggressive theory, and I just wanted to kind of put that out there, kind of just talk to people about it. I didn't want to like make this some big spectacle. Like I was gonna show, like I can cite every panel and like anything I've said I can cite, but I didn't want to like make this into some grand structure video. I wanted this more to be like just a really interesting talking one. Like I'm doing a video soon, whenever this comes out. I mean, I guess I'm about to upload this right now, actually. After this video, like I'm about to do a video on Damari at some point soon, and that one I don't think it will be more of a detailed video rather than this is just a theory. Like it's not one of my one archive videos. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this theory. What do you think it'd be cool? Do you think it makes sense? I figured that just by the way everything is kind of set up and what we know about Ignia, that this is a very logical way to go. And we've already had Ignia bring up the fact that he knows that hurting people close to Natsu makes his power grow. And he brought up, well, I could just kill them one by one until you're ready to fight me. So we'll see how that all kind of plays out. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, prefer the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. But that, appreciate everybody already subscribed. Thank you all for listening. Bye.